All right, guys, welcome back to another episode to the show Baseball Podcast. Today's February 4th, which means we are less than 2 weeks away from pitchers and catchers report all around spring training. I am your host, Andrew Parker. I am joined by Chris Henrique as well. And we do have Zach Penrod joining the show later for an interview with him as he's gearing up for his first spring training as a member of the 40-man roster for the Boston Red Sox. So please stick around to the end if you are listening. Please make it to the end with our interview with Penrod. And before we get any further, I do want to say, please, wherever you are listening or watching this interview, like and subscribe. It means the world to us. Obviously, if you're on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, wherever you're listening, please take a moment, just like, subscribe, do whatever you got to do to help us out. Obviously, we bring you a new interview on every single episode. But without further ado, I do want to kind of dive in a little bit. With Zach Penrod joining us at the end of this episode, I did want to kind of focus on the pitching staff that he will be part of, especially in Worcester, where he's projected to start the year. And that's why I have Chris here as well. As a little background on me and Chris, we've been around the team for the last couple seasons. We've seen all these guys behind the scenes. We kind of know these guys a little bit more than what they are just on the field. So I did want to start just by kind of talking about that pitching staff in Worcester. And it's something that is a little more improved than it has been the last couple seasons as far as the depth and the rotation that we're about to see. And Chris, I did want to kind of start it off. We had Chad Tracy on one of these shows about a couple months ago now. And I think you asked the question to him, like, is this one of the best rotations that you've had, at least on paper, going into a season? And his answer was quite interesting. So for you, what are your takeaways on some of the new guys, and I guess just what the pitching rotation and staff is as a whole?
Now, the Woo Sox have really good depth, and the Woo Sox are in a really good spot. So in the event that if anybody was to go down with the Red Sox, they have a lot of options to where they can recall somebody and not only have someone who has strong AAA experience. They also have guys that have had big league experience, from Criswell to Michael Fulmer. Fitz had his 4 or 5 starts at the end of last season, and then Priester has had some with Pittsburgh, and then the one with the Red Sox to close out the year. So they have really good depth, and I think in years past we've talked about different levels of depth. I think this year's depth, they're in a spot again. If a guy goes and has a tight lat and they miss a month, you can have a guy like Criswell or Fitz or Priester, just in that order, jump up to the big league club, and you're still going to feel pretty confident into what they're going to be able to give you. So, I mean, it's kudos to the front office over the last now 2 years of, building out the pipeline. And this is part of building out the pipeline, not just, developing the guys that they have, but also getting guys that can fill in. And from a AAA perspective, I mean, the Woo Sox, 1 through 6, if they decide to go 1 through 6 or 1 through 5, and then have the Tuesday, hop on the Sunday, they have a really strong staff. None of the guys are top prospects, and they're not going to lead a rotation, but for a 162 season, the depth is there, and it's something to be excited about if you're really excited about pitching, especially around the Red Sox.
Yeah, I think something too to point out as well in regards to the staff. As of today, on February 4th, I know there's still some free agents out there, obviously, on the hitting side and pitching side. But, if they stuck with this roster going into spring training, you have 6 guys right now that are projected to start the year in Worcester that are on the 40-man roster in the pitching staff. So that's whether it's starting rotation and bullpen wise. And I think that's something that we didn't really see a lot the past couple seasons. You didn't see all the guys that were like, okay, if somebody goes down in the bullpen, the Zach Kellys of the world or whoever will be the first one up. Like, that'll be the guy they turn to. Like, if there's an injury in the bullpen, Zach Kelly's going up, or whoever it is. But now going into like 2025, I feel like if they do have one of those arms go down in the starting rotation, they're just like, okay, we're not screwed. Like, we have a couple guys on the 40-man that are capable of it. And I think that's the biggest takeaway that I have. And that also kind of leads me to my next topic here of some of the new guys that are calling the Red Sox organization home for the first time in their career coming into this year. I'm gonna just list a few, and then I got a question for you, Chris. But we had Noah Davis on the show as well. I think just 2 weeks ago now. But he was one of the new faces to the org, and he's a former driveline guy. He's got that relationship with Kyle Bodie and all that. So he's included in this question to you, and then as well as there's Hobie Harris, there's Sean Newcomb, Robert Stock. We'll even throw in Michael Fulmer since he was injured last year. So for you, with some of the new guys that are joining the team and are projected to start the year maybe in the minors, who are a couple names that you're kind of excited about, or who kind of like sticks out to you a little bit?
Yeah, one of them, I'm gonna kind of go with an obvious one to start off with, and I'm really excited to see Richard Fitz, like the next step with him. Just really mainly because we were around him all of last year in Worcester, and we really got to see him go from being a 4 inning guy, 4 2/3 innings guy, to a 5-6 inning pitcher, to being able to really give like a good self-analysis of where he was as a pitcher, and you getting that information and kind of passing it around to Chad and him kind of validating what he what Fitz was saying. So then Fitz got the opportunity to pitch at the big league level, and he looked really good. Granted, 4 starts, very small sample size, but a lot to build off of. So I want to see how his offseason, what he did during the offseason, how did he come into camp, and what does that spring training look like for him, even if he doesn't make the big league club. So I'm excited with him. I am excited to see what Priester does look like too. Did he get more of the velo back on the fastball? Because that was something that they really wanted for him to grab towards the end of last season. Did he put on weight? Because that was something he was trying to do. What does he look like physically versus what he did last year? Because, the dude was pretty big and in shape as it is. So what does he look like now after having a full off season in the Red Sox, pitching development program versus the Pirates? Shane Drummond is another guy too. Again, I've said it for a few years now. I like watching Shane pitch. I just like the way the ball comes out of his hand. He wasn't fully healthy in the grand scheme of things. The shoulder was still barking. He got shut down towards the end of last year, but now he's healthy. He's at a full off season. I'd like to see him make positive contributions for the Red Sox out of the bullpen versus being in the rotation, because I just don't see him cracking the rotation with the big league club. And I'm actually for one of the NRI guys, and it's going to be Sean Newcomb, mainly because it's a local kid from this area. You're coming back, you're getting an opportunity to wear Red Sox across your chest. I think that means something, especially if you're a local guy. He's another one too that has had some injuries in his past where, if he's past that injury side of it and the Red Sox can tap and get something out of him, he's another good left-hander. It's depth at the AAA level that has pitched in the big leagues before that could come in and instantly, pitch meaningful innings out of the bullpen. It's not just having, and nothing against Brendan Bernardino, but it's not just Bernardino anymore. You have him, you have Giovanni Moran, you have Penrod, your guest later on. So there are options. So those are some of the guys that I'm excited about from a pitching standpoint. I would say my one dark horse that I want to finally see crack the big leagues, and it's Brian Mata. You know what I mean? Just because another one, tremendous arm, electric stuff, constantly dealt with injuries last year. So I think if you look at everybody that they do have, though, and if you go to Sox prospects and go from top to bottom, there are so many different stories around these players that you can potentially get behind and get excited about. So for me, and if I was going to just pick one, if I'm going to give you just one, it's going to be Quinn Priester.
And that's another guy too that I mentioned earlier, our episode with Chad Tracy that we had a couple months ago, and he went on and on about how dialed in and how focused Quinn Priester was, and something that they attacked, and like you said earlier, is they attacked the velocity. His velocity was very down after the trade when he came over, and that's something that Justin Willard and company really targeted and focused on. And I think Chad said that he was up towards the end of the year from where he was when he came over in the trade. But I love one of those names you threw out, by the way, the Brian Mata name. And obviously, Brian Mata has been a topic of discussion for the past 2 years for Red Sox fans. He's been a top pitching prospect in the organization before. And obviously he could just never get it together. And that could never be healthy, never could, get off the injured list. And obviously he was out of options this past year, and he somehow survived in the Red Sox system all the way through to the off season. But he's a guy now that there's not a lot of pressure on. I feel like there's no pressure now. He's not on the 40-man roster. He doesn't have to be optioned anymore. It's like, last offseason, I remember coming out, it was like, he's either got to be on the big league team or he's DFA. That was the only two options. Or on the injured list, I guess, is the other one, which ended up happening. But I feel like now, no pressure on him. And I just want to see him go out there and just throw. Like, show yourself in Worcester, get back to where you were, and see what you got. So I couldn't agree with you more. I got a two-parter here for you as we kind of like wrap up here in our first little portion before we head to the Zach Penrod interview. But I want to talk about the offense on that team. Obviously, it's a team that last season had a ton of hype towards the end of the season, obviously, with getting Roman Anthony and Christian Campbell and Marcel Meyer for a week. But a lot of top prospects on that team and on the hitting side of things. And I guess that's where I want to lead you. So I got a two-parter here. First one for you, Chris. Let's say this example here is, in my example, Christian Campbell will make the team to start to break camp. So he will be the starting second baseman because as of right now, there is no Alex Bregman, knock on wood. There's no anything else. So let's just say in this example, he's on the big league team. What guy in Worcester do you see projected to start the year? Who do you think would be one of the first guys up?
It would be, I would think it'd be Vaughn Grissom. That's if,
Okay.
That's if Vaughn doesn't make the team. I can't imagine that they would have him make the team and then platoon him. Same thing with Christian Campbell, like, because just from an everyday at bat perspective, it doesn't make sense just to do that. But I would have to think it would be Vaughn Grissom would be the first guy. But I also think too, it's going to, it depends too, because like Roman Anthony, you could say Roman Anthony, but he's only going to play the outfield. It's like, he can't give you anything in the infield. Same thing with Grissom. He really can't play the outfield. So I would say if it's an infielder, it'd be Vaughn Grissom. And if it's an outfielder, but then again, too, maybe it's Nick Sogard first, just because he has the 40-man designation, providing, let's say he's not DFA'd and they make a move and he was the odd man out. But I'd probably be more inclined to say Vaughn Grissom. I think having his season last year was just, it was just really weird. Like, he got hurt at Story Camp, and then he got hurt at spring training, and then he got hurt again during the regular season with the other hamstring. And then he had that flu and he lost like 10, 12 pounds. He just really didn't seem like he was ever able to get good, on good footing and kind of move himself forward, where now he's had a full, complete off season. He was able to put on weight. If you look at some of the pictures on Instagram and videos, he does look physically bigger, which will be good for durability and things like that. And there was a reason the Red Sox went and got him. You know what I mean? Like, this is a kid that's bat first. There's a reason that they projected him initially to be the opening day second baseman. So I am kind of, I am intrigued to kind of see what Vaughn does. I think we can really cast a good opinion if he has a complete season. You know what I mean? And I don't even mean in the terms of, hey, he played 40 games in Worcester and he played, I don't know, like 105 in Boston. I want to see, one, was he healthy? And two, what did he look like at each one of those levels? There'll be some struggles. Obviously, players get through that. But I think Vaughn's the first guy. If it's an outfielder, again, it might be a coin flip. But I think once you call up Anthony, I don't think you send him back down unless he has like a Jackson Holiday kind of stint. When Jackson got called up by Baltimore and then he really struggled. I think he had like 091 and he ended up getting sent down. And then it wasn't until he got called back up where he really started to, kind of look like what he was expected to be. So I think once Roman gets called up, he's there. Same thing with, Campbell and Meyer. I think once they're called up, they're there, and now they're kind of entrenched to what they're going to try to do. So that's kind of how I see it. But I think Nick Sogard is probably your safe bet right now. I didn't want to go the safe route. I wanted to go with what I felt would be what they would do, and I think Vaughn Grissom would be the guy.
No, I like that answer a lot. And so I have one final question here for you in regards to the offense. And so for this example, this hypothetical here, we're going to exclude Christian Campbell, Vaughn Grissom, and Nick Sogard from this example I'm about to give you. So for every other guy down there and that's projected to start the year in Worcester on the offensive side of things, Who are you most excited about watching? And it can't be any of the guys on the 40 other than, well, we'll say Sable's allowed to be in there, but who are you most excited to watch? You can give me a couple guys.
So if I can't choose those players, well, I think one is going to be one. You have Alex Benelis, who didn't have a ton of playing time at AAA last year. He got called up towards the end. Again, didn't play that much. He's the other piece of the David Hamilton trade. He has that ability to play, both corner infield positions. Probably, maybe, we might see him in the outfield too. I would imagine Chad is going to put him in the outfield as well. I'd like to see him and what he's like being able to face AAA pitching, because sometimes too, like, there are guys, once they get the opportunity to get out of AA or some of the lower level play, kind of like a switch kind of gets turned. They're a different player. We saw that with Roman Anthony. Roman Anthony, in all intents and purposes, really didn't have that good of a year in Portland. But once he got to AAA, he was a completely different animal. I do actually want to see the collection of catchers together. That was something for me last year that was always intriguing, because, what people don't get to see, is when the players report and they're there every day, the catchers work with Chad Tracy every single day. And that's whether it's footwork or it's something by the cage or, whatever it might be, they're doing some sort of work with Chad Tracy. And it is always nice to kind of, pick the manager's brain, who used to be a former catcher, and say, hey, what were you guys working on? So having a guy though, like Zavala, who is a experienced big leaguer and is known for being a good, solid defensive catcher, having him as one of your first, options in line of defense if you were to lose a catcher, I think just having that veteran and adult in the room is going to be big for this pitching staff. Kolozvari is back, who really, he didn't play a ton either, but he worked a lot with pitchers behind the scenes, whether it was in the bullpen, one-offs on the side. Like, he had a really big impact with the pitchers that was kind of like off the scenes, where they would quickly just look at the batting numbers and this is what he hit. Oh, he played X amount of games. No, what he did behind the scenes was actually pretty impactful. So I'm looking forward to seeing like what the catching room kind of looks like, because they're not household names and there's not anybody that's your future when it comes to that, because that now dude is out with the White Sox. So, and from a free agent standpoint, they have Abraham Turo they brought in, and then they have Nate Egan, so these guys, a lot of these guys they brought in, they're not power hitters, they're not, no one's the next Bobby Dahlbeck that's going to go and hit 33 and hit it off the duck boat in the outfield. But these are guys that are legitimate, good, honest, big league depth, that if you lose an infielder and you need a guy kind of like a Jamie Westbrook, Abraham Toro is your guy, or a Nate Eaton is your guy. So they kind of almost like got like two more Nick Sogards, in my opinion, when it just comes from that versatility perspective. But in the overall grand scheme of things, now if they were to call up Blaze Jordan and Jordan starts the year at AAA, he immediately goes to the top of the list, just because of the intrigue of what, how the ball comes off his bat, and how much like of a polarizing player that he is. To me, he could be like the next Mr. Worcester. I think he could be, that huge fan favorite like Sogard. But based off what they have right now, I'm excited about the catchers. I'm excited to talk to Chad about that this year. And I'm really just excited to I'm just kind of excited we're getting back to baseball. It means it's warm out. There's no more snow. It's not cold anymore. You're back around the team, and all the hypothetical about what the team can do or what they should do or what they didn't do is over. Now these are the guys you have in camp, and it's time to move forward. So Woo Sox have a good squad. I think they're pretty deep. They're pretty deep on both sides of the ball.
Yeah, I think this will be one of the better teams you've seen in a little bit down there. Obviously, it's going to look a lot different than it did in years past. Obviously, you've always had guys like Bobby Dahlbeck on the roster. You've had guys like Ryan Fitzgerald in previous years. You've had some staples on that team that's been around, and those guys are now both gone. I feel like Bobby Dahlbeck and Ryan Fitzgerald were on those Woo Sox teams dating back to when, since they moved to Worcester, which they have. But so new team this year, top prospects coming, and upgraded pitching staff, which will be good to watch, obviously, if needed up in Boston. But yeah, well, Chris, I definitely appreciate you, coming on and talking, obviously, a lot about the Woo Sox baseball. Obviously, leading into our interview with Zach Penrod is, Zach Penrod is a member of the 40-man roster and will be a key member of the pitching staff there in Worcester. But yeah, without further ado, let's jump on into our Zach Penrod interview. All right, guys. I am joined by Red Sox pitcher Zach Penrod, coming from down in Fort Myers right now, where he has been for the last week. And Zach, I want to ask. Obviously, you just went through an off season. You're a new father. A lot of changes going on. Obviously, you're a member of the 40-man roster now. But coming out of the off season, how have things gone? And I guess what were you up to this off season?
I've spent most of the off season trying to, figure out how to be a dad, wrap my head around it, and kind of learn everything as I go, and then kind of mix in, all the off season training, things like that, and try to figure out the scheduling and mix it in. So it was definitely an interesting one, but it's been great to get down here and adjust a little bit going into, what I'm going to call the biggest spring training I've had in a long time. So I'm excited about it.
Yeah, and obviously you were added to the 40-man roster during the season last year, towards the end of the season, but so it wasn't new to you in the offseason, but this was your first offseason being part of the 40-man roster. For you, like, did that change anything for you, like the way you went about anything, or was it still like the same old, same old?
Uh, I think it was a lot of the same old, same old. I think there was a little bit more emphasis on certain things, like just like there was a lot more oversight from the club, kind of like leading me in the direction that they thought I wanted to go, kind of pushing me the right way to try to improve myself. So I give myself the best shot to continue to be at the big league level and continue to progress in my career. So there was a little bit of that, but it was still a lot of the same things. Still training at the same place. Um, Using all the same people and stuff like that. So it wasn't too much of a change, but like I said, there was a little bit more push in the right direction.
So a lot of the guys that I've talked to around the organization, I've kind of asked them like, hey, like, well, what have you been up to this offseason? And some guys are like, yo, I'm working out a new spot at Driveline or Tread or wherever it is. And, I'm working on this. Was for you this offseason, was there anything that you were trying to work on from last year, whether it's like your arsenal, certain pitches? Did the team tell you anything that you need to work on? I guess what did that look like for you this offseason?
They gave me a couple of goals to work on. I think a lot of it is keeping my velo at a consistent number. I think they want it up in the upper 90s, which I know that I can accomplish, and so there was a little bit of emphasis on that, and then also being consistent with it. But we've added a couple pitches. We're kind of playing around with stuff that was all still a work in progress. So that's kind of part of the reason I wanted to come down here a little early, is that I could get on the numbers, the stuff that I didn't have at home, and kind of like see what things are doing, what we can improve on, adjustments, and things like that the technology down here kind of offers a little bit of a one-up in that.
So, in regards to these new pitches you added, are they a secret or can you drop what they are?
I mean, it's not really a secret. It's just kind of improving
Okay.
upon the things that I already had. Like I had the cutter that when I first got picked up. They kind of thought that it was blending a little bit too much with my slider, so we kind of banged it for a little while. And so it's one of those things that's like we're taking what we had and they were kind of improving on it. Like the gyro slider, I think last year my vertical break on it was just a little bit too much. So like it's kind of refining things. I say that they're new pitches, kind of new, but at the same time, it's kind of building on what we already had and like trying to move them into be better. So.
And so for you, obviously it's your journey was very well talked about, obviously, once you got up to the big leagues last year and onto the roster. But, obviously you going from indie ball to, the pros all within like a year is just an absolutely crazy career
Mhm.
arc. But you don't really hear about it every day. But I think I asked you a couple times during the season last year, I was like, are you not like exhausted from where you were? And I know obviously, you're a new dad, so I know this offseason was tiring in different ways, but did you get a chance to actually just like kick the feet up and just kind of be like, okay, like we're good. I don't have to go on this crazy path in 2025. Like I'm where I want to be. Like, did you get a chance to like just kind of like take it in?
I think there was a few moments where I kind of like appreciated it, like kind of it's never something that I'm gonna take for granted or anything like that for sure. It was definitely a wild ride, but like in my opinion, like at this point, I just got a taste of it. I think 2.5 weeks, something like that. I got a feel for it. It's something it's you accomplish something like that, and you kind of think to yourself like, okay, where do I go from here? And it's kind of one of those things like I want to stick around. This is where I want to be. Um, it's they told me at the end of the year they were kind of like don't let it just be a story, like you're kind of here now, you've made it, so the story's there, and so now it's just kind of stick around and see what you can accomplish from there. So I kind of went into this off season thinking I've been in pro ball for I think this will be my 7th year. And so going to 25, it's really just my career just started in my eyes. So it's kind of, we're building up from the ground up, and everything that happened before this is like, the framework, and then everything from there is just, bonus and then building. So.
And you're still young too. I think, I don't know if that gets lost on just like they see your journey and they're just like, you've been around forever, and you went to indie ball, you were in pro ball, you went to indie ball, this, like, you got to be like 32 years old by this point. And it's like, no, like you're on the good side of 30 still. So I think that's something that's kind of lost sometimes. It's like, you're still young, like you still have like plenty of years ahead of you and that arm and everything. So but with that being said, there's been a lot of talk this off season regarding you. And obviously, we saw you last season pitch out of the starting rotation there in Worcester, and then you ended up going in the bullpen and saw some bullpen time, down the stretch. So going into 25, what does that look like? Where are you at with where you're going to be?
I mean, I think the plan as of right now is just kind of build up for extended innings and then kind of go from there. I think as of right now, I think the best path to contribute is in the bullpen. But at the same time, like, it's kind of one of those situations where I'm willing to go where they tell me to do. I think I have the versatility. I think I kind of proved that last year, that I can go ahead and and switch from back and forth. And I don't think it's something. I think it's something that my arm could adapt to and figure it out. And kind of whatever takes me to the big leagues is kind of where I'm at this point. So.
And so obviously, you like you said, you'd kind of bounce around a couple, to a couple different roles. And, sometimes you were doing one inning, sometimes you were multiple innings out of the bullpen. You also started. So you kind of saw like three different, I guess, variations of your role last year of being a one inning guy, multi-inning guy, starter. So what did you learn about yourself last year? Just being able to take, just getting ready every 5-6 days for a start compared to like, hey, I might need to go tomorrow 2 innings, and then the next day I might have to go 1. Like, what did you learn about yourself?
I think, it was tough at first. I think I learned that, there is the ability to make that switch. It's definitely something different. Like you said, I mean, the focus isn't quite the same when you're going out every 5th, 6th day. You have the ability to kind of look back and you have a good start and you kind of build off of that. You have a bad one, you learn from your mistakes. And then in the bullpen, you really don't have that, like, that bounce back period. Like, I struggled a little bit towards the end of the year, and it was one of those things where it was like, all right, well, tonight's over. You kind of like gotta reach in the back of your mind and try to let it go, and then move on to the next day. And you show up ready at the field, and you're like, you know what, I'm probably in the game tonight, so I have the opportunity to make something different happen. If something didn't go right the night before. So I think I learned that I had that ability. I think it's something that I definitely need to hone a little bit more, but I think it's there, and just gotta learn from the mistakes.
We had Justin Slayton on the show, I think about a couple months ago now, and he was obviously he had a very good rookie year this past season, and he was always talking about how having a guy like Andrew Bailey, and he even mentioned guys like Chris Martin and Kenley Jansen in the bullpen that kind of like really helped like guide him in the way, like, as being a young guy on the roster, being surrounded by them. And he was very appreciative of how Andrew Bailey and co were, the pitching development as well with Justin Willard and everybody else, but just how like well they worked with him to kind of get the best version of him on the mound. So for you, and being like, obviously having the great journey and making it to the 40-man roster and obviously to the big leagues last year, like, how has your relationship been with guys, with an Andrew Bailey? And I guess, how are they kind of guiding you to where you need to be?
It's good. I was in talks with them pretty much all off season. Like I said, we were kind of like trying to navigate these different pitches and things like that, and try to find, like, get the best version of them out there. And I was in communication with them constantly. They were always reaching out, making sure everything was good, trying to get video, kind of like improve upon things as best we can from that distance. But at the same time, like, they've been awesome. When I first got up there, Bailey was very, like, excited to have me there, and we were excited to get to work. And it was the same kind of thing when I got down here. They got here this week and they're already ready to go to work. They're excited to kind of like work in person and get these things done. And I got to meet Holt at the Fenway Fest, so that was good. So I think I'm really excited about this year. I get the full season, or hopefully a full season of like that development and things like that, to find the best version of myself that I can.
Yeah, I did want to ask you about Fenway Fest, and Obviously, something near and dear to a lot of Red Sox fans was Winter Weekend when it was out in Springfield, and just being out for the entire weekend and having all the guys there and everything. Obviously, this was the first year it was at Fenway, and getting to take in Fenway Park and everything like that. But for you, what was your experience like at Fenway Fest?
I loved it, honestly. Like it snowed the day we were there, so I got to see Fenway in the snow. So that was awesome. It was nice to get to go there and like kind of just enjoy the city a little bit, enjoy, Fenway and everything that has to offer, a little bit less of a intense, like moment, I guess, that you could say. I wasn't there to pitch or anything like that. I was just there to kind of enjoy it and just enjoy it as much as the fans did. And I hope everybody had a good time because I had a blast. It was fun getting to meet a lot of the new guys and stuff like that. And like I said, there was a little bit less pressure going in, so it was a lot more fun.
So yeah, speaking of some of the new guys on the staff, obviously a pretty big addition in the pitching rotation is Garrett Crochet. Obviously, he's a fellow left-hander, and obviously you got Walker Buehler there that's now added as well, and you have Aroldis Chapman and a couple other guys as well that were added to the pitching side of things. But for you, being a fellow member of the pitching staff, like, what were your thoughts on seeing like more talent come into the organization, whether it was at the major league level or even the AAA level?
I was excited about it. I think we have an amazing staff. Every single time somebody got added, I was like, wow, that's awesome. They're nasty. Like this is gonna be great. I think it's gonna be super competitive this year, and it's gonna be fun to watch. And I honestly, I hope to be just a part of it as much as I can be, contribute in any way that I absolutely can. But I was really excited sitting at home, seeing all these guys get added, and thinking, you know what, dang, I'm gonna be in the locker room with them. We're gonna be on the same team. I get to know them a little bit. It's fun. It was a cool experience, and I'm excited looking forward to the season.
So obviously you're part of the big league spring training, obviously being on the 40-man roster, but are there any guys that you're kind of looking forward to, sharing, having a locker next to, or maybe a catch partner, or like just maybe picking brains on a certain pitch? Or is there any guys like that are at the major league level you're looking forward to doing that with?
Yeah, I've been talking. I got to know Crochet a little bit at Fenway Fest, like I said, and I got to watch him throw a bullpen down there. I started asking him questions immediately, like, hey, man, how do you hold this? How do you do that? And then I got down here and Whitlock was throwing bullpens, and I was asking him like, hey, like, how can I make this better and things like that. And I think there's a ton of guys like that. I haven't even met the whole of the new staff yet, so I think there's going to be plenty of that. But I'm going to catch as many bullpens as I can, and like I said, try to pick as many brains as I can down here. I'm excited to see more of Garrett throw, both Garrett squared throwing. So just see what I can do and try to emulate some of those pitches as best I can. Maybe add something to my arsenal.
So we kind of talked about your path earlier, is like, you being a guy that, you were starting and then you ended up going to the bullpen, and, you had kind of mentioned that that's one of your, that's a possible path to major league time. And I feel like we've seen it quite a few times over the last like few years of, guys like Tanner Howe, Garrett Whitlock, and, even Hunter Dobbins has come out and said, hey, like, if I need to go to the bullpen to get to the big leagues, like, that's what I'm going to do. Have you had like, have you talk to any guys like, even like the Hunter Dobbins of the world, and, either the Whitlocks and the Houks of the world that, that have done that? And even Cutter Crawford has done that as well, and he's had success now. It's like you have all these guys that were starting, go to the bullpen, go back to starting again. Have you had any talks about like how to be successful at the big league level by doing that with them?
I haven't touched on it a lot. If I'm being honest, I think a lot of it is just contributing in any way you can, and then taking advantage of the opportunity you're given and seeing what that leads to. Like you said, going back and forth is never an ideal situation, but if that gives you the opportunity to make that big league roster and get that time in, I think moving back and forth is not the worst thing in the world, and you just step up in the opportunities that you're given. If you decide to spot start you one day, take advantage of that and see what you can do, and maybe you leverage your way into a role later on. So I'll definitely touch with those guys a little bit more and see what they say and go from there. But.
All right, I got a couple Worcester questions ended, just because, obviously you spent a little bit of time in Worcester, not as much as some other guys, but you had a front row seat at some of the best prospects in baseball over the last year. Obviously, with Roman not number one anymore because of Sasaki, but he's still, he's number two. So he's number one in the Sox system, let's just say that. And you obviously have Christian Campbell as well. And you have Marcelo Meyer, who a lot of people are forgetting about these days, which I don't know why. But so you kind of had like a front row seat. You got to pitch in front of him. You got to see him hit down in Portland and up in Worcester as well. How excited are you to be able to pitch in front of these guys in 2025 and, see them kind of do their thing once again? Like, how cool was that last year to pitch in front of them?
It was awesome. Like never really had to worry about run support. I feel like I go out there and I feel like, even on their worst day, they're getting at least a hit or two. And then between the three of them, who knows what's going to happen? If they're all on one day, you never know what's going to happen. It's going to be exciting. I think they're all awesome guys first, and then amazing players on top of that. So I think it's going to be an exciting year, and I'm very much looking forward to seeing what happens with them. And having them in there again is going to be great. Having them behind me.
So what was your favorite part about pitching in Worcester?
Oh, I don't know. The theme songs are great. The fan atmosphere is awesome. I really love it there. I really did enjoy my time in Worcester. I think my favorite part is just, going out there and feeling like it feels like as close to a big league atmosphere as you're going to get at the AAA level. And I think it's great. I think I'm looking forward to it. If I'm down there throwing, I think it's going to be exciting.
So I do want to ask too, obviously, what was the best part about being a big leaguer? I guess, like, obviously, like once you get there, not necessarily your debut, but what was the best part about, just afterward, just being like, I have made it to where I want to go. And I guess what was the best part about that afterward, the debut?
Just being around so much like baseball knowledge, it was something else. I didn't even like everywhere I looked around, it was like, oh my gosh, like I watched that guy growing up or something like that, like having Tech in the clubhouse or having Bailey there. And you're like looking at these guys that are having Cora as your manager. And you're like, I grew up, watching these guys. And like my brother was a huge Red Sox fan, so I always heard it all the time. And I was like, it's insane. You could pick anybody's brain in the clubhouse and they're going to give you just a super knowledgeable answer about it. It feels like everywhere you look, there's that guy. And so I got to do that. And then also just being around the players, like I said, there's guys on the team that you watched playing, and then you're on the team with them. You're just on a daily basis interacting, and it was a great feeling.
So last question for you as we wrap up here. I'm going to say, I'm going to give you I guess in this scenario here, you're going into, I think you had mentioned it earlier in the interview, it might be one of your biggest spring trainings that you've had, obviously being a new guy to the roster and everything like that. So with that kind of going into this, it's just here, pitchers and catchers report here. And I think just like 10 days, 9 days. So it's coming up quick. So I don't know if you're a goal guy. I don't know, like if you set like numeric, like, numbers goals, or like if it's just like, velo goals or whatever it is. But for you and your spring training, so over the next month and a half until we get to opening day, what is one of your primary goals down in Fort Myers?
Honestly, primary goal every year is stay healthy. I think that's number one. I think as long as I'm healthy, I'm going to get the best out of myself. And so that's always my number one goal. But, down here, I don't necessarily set statistical goals. I don't think like those are kind of like secondary, but like I just want to, continue to have fun doing what I'm doing. I think that's, again, a healthy, and then also enjoying the time that I am down here. I'm going to get the best out of myself. Excuse me, not necessarily anything statistically. I think down here, like I said, I want to throw as hard as I can and see where it takes me at this point. So that's where I'm at.
I think I heard you say that to me at the end of the season. Once you move to the bullpen, you're like, I just want to see how hard I can throw. Like once I get into these 1-inning roles, I just want to see that number light up. And what was your highest velo last year that you did hit in a game?
I think it was like 98.8 or something like that. I think somebody told me one time that it was 99, but I don't believe them. So I think it was 98 something.
I want to say a stadium gun hit you in Worcester. It was like right before you got called up. and I thought it said 100, or could have said 99 point
I
something
got
on
I got
the.
I got a couple 99s on there. I think it rounds up, but I got the report back and they weren't quite 99, so I don't get to claim them yet.
Okay, so are we aiming for 99 this year, not 100? Think he got a phone call here. It's all right, Zach. You got a phone call.
Yeah, I got called. Sorry, but it's always 100. I don't think I'll be happy until I see the triple digits.
All right. Well, Zach. Obviously, we appreciate you hopping on. Obviously, we're gonna be looking out for you once spring training here starts up in a week and a half. So, nothing but the best. Obviously, congrats on being a new father this offseason. That's that's bigger than baseball right there. I think that puts a lot of things into perspective. So, looking for that dad strength on the mound this year, probably to get you to triple digits. And
Me too.
wishing you nothing but the best. But thank you so much, Zach.
Appreciate it. Yeah, absolutely.